Hey, it's Kyle here, and today I'm very excited to talk about one of my favorite authors' newest books, and that is Pierce Brown Lightbringer, which is his newest book in his Red Rising series, which is actually the sixth book in this series. Absolutely adore the Red Rising series. When Red Rising first came out, it quickly became one of my favorite books of all time, and I've really loved this series ever since then. Each book to me is more ambitious. Pierce Brown's writing to me continues to get better and better with each book. He continuously keeps me guessing with where the series is going to go, and I think it's always a good sign after each book. I like, oh, I can't wait for the next one. I hope the series continues to go on for a lot longer. Love this series so much. If you haven't read the Red Rising series, I would definitely recommend you check out the first book, Red Rising. It's kind of a mixture, I would say, of elements of like Hunger Games, but then you're mixing in more serious sci-fi elements of Game of Thrones. It's a lot more violent than the Hunger Games, which is Hunger Games is pretty violent, but Red Rising goes to another level. The characters are fascinating, and the very cool thing with this series is the main characters we're following when they start off are fairly young, but as the series goes along, you know, we're now getting into like their middle ages and stuff like that. So you see the characters develop. More characters are introduced. That's one thing I'll say about Pierce Brown. He probably has the largest number of characters going on in a book that you see now. It's massive. In fact, that can be one of the struggles, especially when it's been a couple years since the last book. When you tack on a new one, you have to kind of remind yourself who all these characters are, because he's bringing up so many names. It can be a little jarring when you first start the book. But I would say, like, if you enjoy sci-fi, if you enjoyed stuff like Game of Thrones, maybe if when you're younger you enjoyed the Hunger Games, but you want maybe a more serious version of that, I would definitely check out Red Rising. Basic concept of the series is set in our future, but the same solar system, so Earth, you know, all that stuff. And at some point, humans have left Earth and kind of settled, colonized several planets in our solar system. And I should say they haven't left Earth; they still live on Earth, but they've colonized several other planets in our solar system, and they've kind of created a government and society somewhat based on ancient Greek and Roman society, as a way to kind of maintain stability in this new human empire that's been established. And the book kind of explores this world, the power struggle that exists within it. It's very fascinating, and I highly recommend it. Because this is the sixth book in the series, I'm not really going to get into the plot a whole lot, because if somebody hasn't read the series yet, I don't want to ruin anything for them. So one, if you haven't read the series before, go read Red Rising. I believe you'll love it, and you have a lot of great books to look forward of. Thing I'll mention about Lightbringer. So one, I would say overall I really enjoyed this book a lot. First half of the book I wasn't super crazy for it. I was like, oh, maybe this is the first book in the series I'm not going to love. I still thought it was okay, but I wasn't crazy about it. The second half of the book blew me away. Loved it. The storyline started to come in together in a way that was very satisfying for me. I loved how the characters were developing. In some cases, the character development surprised me, but it still made sense in the storyline. And there were several points where I thought, like, oh, I think I have a feeling of how this book's storyline is going to end. And every time I thought I had a handle on it, Pierce Brown changed it on me and surprised me. But again, surprised me in a way that made sense. Because, you know, sometimes authors try to surprise a reader, and we go, well, this logic doesn't follow. This makes zero sense. Every time Pierce Brown throws a surprise in this book, to me, the logic does track, and you kind of follow. I can see why that character did something. I just would never have guessed that character would have done that. So by the time I finished this book, I was very happy with Lightbringer. I loved it a lot. So far, it's my favorite book I've read this year, and it definitely makes me excited for this series to continue. I'll mention just a couple brief things. Like, I really love the storyline between Darrow, Cassius, and Severo. Their storyline, they're coming to struggle with everything they've had to deal with in this series. The trauma is amazing. I think that's one thing this series does an amazing job, is exploring the trauma that the characters have experienced. A lot of these sci-fi series, dystopian series, these characters go through all this horrific stuff, and it really doesn't do a great job in a lot of books, in my opinion, of like really showing how these big events impacted. They'll maybe allude to it, but then like 20 pages later, the character just seems to be normal again. This book does a great job of showing like these characters have went through some serious stuff. It's really screwed them up, but they're trying to figure out a way to make it through it. And each of these characters are dealing with their trauma in different ways. And I thought that was a very powerful element of the storyline in this book. And it's been a common theme throughout this series, but I think it really comes into focus in this book. Lysander was also a very interesting character that I really enjoyed his journey a lot. I was always happy the decisions made, but I found his journey very interesting. I would say in early books in the series, I wasn't as big a fan of this character, but now he's kind of developed into a character that I think is adding a lot to the series. And I don't always agree or like the decisions he makes, but he's making this a much more interesting storyline by his presence of being the character he has developed into. Love the stuff with the Rim and their society and how they're becoming involved more in the storyline. Really, like I said, it's just mind-blowing. Like I said, my main complaint was the first half of the book, and I think it's because I mentioned Pierce Brown has a lot of characters. The first half of the book, like all the characters are in there, and you don't feel like you're spending a whole lot of time with anybody, so you're not really getting fully invested in the storylines. It's hard to keep track of like who's who and who belongs to which side. But by that second half of the book, Pierce Brown really nails down the focus a lot, focuses on a handful of characters in each little storyline that's going on, and it helps you become more connected with the storyline, more connected with these characters, really invested, and it really pays off at the end. There's some amazing battle scenes in this book. That's when I think Pierce Brown does an amazing job of these big, huge battles, but also these one-on-one combat scenes. In fact, there's a fight scene that Darrow is involved in at the end, which is one of my favorite fight scenes, like hand-to-hand combat I've ever read in a book before. It was amazing. So I think I don't want to gush anymore over this series. The Red Rising series is amazing. Highly recommend it. And the Lightbringer is a very worthy addition to this series. I'm also very excited. I follow Pierce Brown on Instagram. I saw he did a post before this book came out that like you could order some books with his autograph from a independent bookstore in New York City. So I did that. So this book is actually autographed by Pierce Brown. It's very cool. So Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, highly recommend it, and definitely highly recommend the Red Rising series. Let me know in the comments section below, have you read the Red Rising series, and what do you think about it? Who's your favorite character? And let me know, is there a series like Red Rising that you'd recommend I would check out that you think, oh, if Kyle, if you enjoy Red Rising, you'll enjoy this series. But I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, hit that like button. If you have yet, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate the support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you the next time, and happy reading.